Before I ask Jess to call the roll, I'll start off with my usual reminders to help our meeting go smoothly. First, I encourage everybody who's joining by phone or video conference to mute your microphones while others are speaking to help us cut down on any additional background noise. I'm also going to ask chancellors and staff from the system administration and our campuses to turn off their video unless they'd like to speak or need to present an item. If after turning on your video you want to be acknowledged to engage in our discussion, please raise your hand. For those of you wearing masks, please remember to speak into your microphones loudly and clearly so everybody can hear you. I hope you can hear me well. And then finally, remember to identify yourself when making comments or asking questions. And with that, Jess, please call the roll.
Regent President Peterson.
Here.
Regent Vice President Greedy.
Here.
Regent Atwell.
Here.
Regent Bechtel.
Here.
Regent Boga.
Here.
Regent Malone.
Here.
Regent Hall.
Here.
Regent Jones.
Here.
Regent Klein.
Here. Sorry.
Regent Lesville.
Here.
Regent Menedee.
Here.
Regent Peterson. Regent Staffel.
Here.
Regent Stanford Taylor.
Here.
Regent Walsh.
Here.
Regent Weatherly.
Here.
Regent Woodmansee.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Jess. As we consider items on today's agenda, are there board members who wish to declare any conflicts of interest regarding today's open session? Okay, hearing none, let's get started. Before we get started with today's agenda, I wanted to recognize the tragic and unexpected loss of one of our Regent colleagues. Early last week, we got the very sad news that Regent José Delgado passed away on January 24th. This came as a shock to all of us, as José had been healthy and gregarious as usual. Sometimes there's no explanation for events of this magnitude. That said, we must all remember the contributions and commitments José put forward over these last 7 years. Regent Delgado's charm, his grace, and his commitment to his role as Regent were extraordinary. His passion, exuberance, and experience will be deeply missed by all of us who served with him. Regent Delgado was a public servant who always advocated for Wisconsin students and the integrity of public higher education. José never forgot where he came from. He appreciated the opportunities that he's experienced in coming to the United States, and he cared deeply about extending similar opportunity to others. Later today, we will conclude our open session with a formal recognition and tribute of Regent Delgado's service to the UW system. To Regent Delgado's extended family, his friends, and all those he has touched through his leadership, involvement, and faith, let me express on behalf of the entire Board of Regents our heartfelt condolences for this significant loss. Regent José Delgado is a lion of a man, and he will be missed sorely, yet his leadership and his legacy will carry forward. President Thompson, I believe you'd like to express a few words as well.
Thank you very much, President Peterson. It is a sad day when somebody of the stature, the capacity, the intellect of a José Delgado passes. He was all of our friends, and I can remember working with him when I was a legislator and also as governor, when he came up with the idea of trying to put all of the transmission lines of electricity together. It was way out there, but that's the way José thought. He thought it could be done, and he put it together. And he was able to become the president of the American Transmission Company, a very successful company under his leadership. He became a member of the Board of Regents. He was very successful there. But I think what really separated him was his charm, his personality. He was an individual that loved to talk. He loved to communicate with people. He loved students. I mean, you put José Delgado in a room, he would spend his time talking, getting to know you, getting to like you, and you liking him. It's a rare person that has that capabilities and ability. And that was José Delgado's strongest suit. His love for tomorrow, his love for the future, his love to make everybody better. And that's why he loved being on the Board of Regents. He wanted everybody to get an education, preferably from the university, where he got his doctor's degree. And he was able to always charm individuals into believing that they could accomplish something even better. José Delgado will miss you. You are an inspiration, a true leader, and somebody I really love to be able to call you my friend. To his family, to the rest of us, José Delgado was a strong leader, a fine person, and somebody we will always miss and cherish.
Thank you, President Thompson. The records of the December 10th, 2020 Board of Regents meeting and the January 29th, 2021 Executive Committee have been provided. May I have a motion to approve these two records?
Motion to approve by Regent Bechtel.
Thank you, Regent Bechtel. May I have a second?
Second, Mike Jones.
Thank you, Regent Jones. Any discussion on these matters? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motions are approved. The report of the Wisconsin Technical College System Board has been provided. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, now I'd like to provide an update on the search for a new chancellor at UW-River Falls. Last month, the search committee approved the position prospectus, and the search officially opened on January 18th. The search and screen committee, which is chaired by Regent Scott Bechtel, is expected to meet again in late March to select semifinalist candidates for off-campus interviews. Next, I have a quick calendar item. February is typically when I make a call for Regents to hold the date for the annual Research in the Rotunda event, one of the UW system's most significant outreach events. Traditionally, this event is held in the Capitol Rotunda, and it brings together outstanding undergraduate student researchers from all across the system and our campuses, together with their faculty advisors, to share the research findings that they've discovered on a variety of important topics with legislators, state leaders, UW alumni, and other supporters. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this wonderful get-together has to be canceled for the year, and so we will look forward to its return in 2022. Finally, with February being Black History Month, I'd like to reiterate the long-standing support of this board for advancing greater diversity throughout the system. A diverse campus community and the many ways that that can be defined is integral to fulfilling our primary mission, which is to provide a high-quality education to our students. It's also vital, as events of the past year have shown, to help maintain a healthy society and strong communities. That's also one of the reasons it was so important for the UW system to launch the new Wisconsin Region Opportunity Scholarships Program, which we announced this past November. Through these scholarships, we hope to attract more underrepresented and underserved undergraduate students to our UW universities. The Regents have committed to providing $1 million annually for these scholarships. And finally, tomorrow morning, we'll be honoring the recipients of the 13th Annual Regents Diversity Awards. We had an impressive pool of nominees this year, and I look forward to hearing from our winners. The work that they do is important and makes a real difference every day. It's also incredibly inspiring. And that today concludes my report. I'll turn it over to you, President Thompson.
Thank you very much, President Peterson. I'm going to start out today by giving you an update on our ongoing COVID-19 response. You have probably seen that UW system is going to receive an additional 160,000 tests from the federal government. 140,000 Binex tests, which is a really fast one, and 20,000 PCR tests, which is the gold standard that you have to send into a laboratory from the federal government. This is absolutely amazing because we were the only one chosen in the whole country. And the total amount is over $60 million of testing and individuals that the federal government has hired to come in and administer the test. And it's extremely good news for the university because it gives us an added bit of recognition when we need it. The data seems to indicate that our aggressive testing in the communities is at least in part, I think a major part, responsible for the decline in the number of daily COVID-19 cases in Wisconsin. For your edification, we are down at less than 1%. Today it's 0.04 of 1%, 0.04 tenths of 1% as far as positivity rate on our campuses. About 7% in our surge testing in the community. In addition to regularly testing our students, faculty and staff with rapid result tests all fall, we have administered now more than 220,000 free public tests at 22 surge testing sites on all of our UW campuses. This is the testing that was given to us or paid for by the federal government. In the process, we identified 18,000 potential positive carriers of the virus who were then advised to quarantine, effectively taking them out of circulation. And when we started, if you remember, Wisconsin was on fire. We were number one in the country as far as infection. And today, that infection rate is down at 6 or 7% in our surge testing and less than 1% on our campus. By offering these free tests to the general public, we're seeing the same impact in our communities that we experience on our UW campuses. We're making people who feel healthy more aware that they may indeed have the virus, so we ask them to quarantine. This really is a case where knowledge is power. If they're tested and test positive, then they can take the appropriate steps to avoid further spread with their families, workplaces, and neighborhoods. By early November, Wisconsin had joined the rest of the nation in experiencing a sharp increase in case loads. And over the subsequent weeks, new cases nationwide continued to trend steeply upwards. But Wisconsin began and sustained a dramatic turn downward. Wisconsin's break for the national trend began when the surge testing program started in early November. The statewide positivity rate still isn't as low as any of us would like, but it's far better than it would have been if not for the University of Wisconsin living up to its public service mission for the people of this great state. When the state is facing a problem, as you probably have heard me say many times, I want the people of the state of Wisconsin to turn to the University of Wisconsin system so that we can become part of the solution. With the spring semester now underway, we're taking lessons learned from a successful fall testing program. We're turning up the dials, incorporating new advances in testing technology, and we're going to double the number of tests, and we're going to expand the frequency of testing for all students going to our campuses, which we believe will help foster an even safer environment on our campuses and their surrounding communities. We've asked many of our students and the faculty and staff as we implemented the testing protocols, and they have responded tremendously. Wearing masks, it's certainly the cultural responsibility that has been instilled in the students as well as the faculty. Wearing masks, washing hands, keeping distance. But even as the promise of vaccine raises our hopes that the end of this pandemic is on the horizon, this is no time to be complacent about the need for continued testing. As long as the virus continues to spread at any rate, and particularly with the expected rise in the number of positive cases due to the even more easily transmitted variants, the public health crisis is still very much a reality. We have a duty to our students and our staff to maximize the safety of our campus communities. And as we have seen over the months, our testing program is one key part to achieving that goal. My leadership team and I remain in regular contact with state public health officials, and we're also prepared to assist with the resources of the UW system in other ways. And that includes the UW Student Nurse Initiative, which we started. And I appreciate the support of the board. At last count, we have on our way up to 1,000 students from throughout the system who have signed up for the $500 tuition credit available to students who worked in direct patient health care between December and February. And these students are on the front line now in helping Wisconsin battle the pandemic. We're also going to extend an additional $500 credit to students who will help administer vaccinations anywhere in Wisconsin, which we hope is very soon and we'll be able to help out. We have a strong partnership with the Department of Health and Human Services. I don't think it's ever been stronger. They're calling us and we talk to them on a daily basis. And the National Guard, we're also helping out. They're going to rely heavily on engagement from our nursing and pharmacy students to help staff mobile vaccination teams to serve high-need communities. Our students will also help administer vaccines in their own campus communities through local public health and healthcare providers. Once again, we're solving problems, and that's the new University of Wisconsin. I am so proud of how engaged our deans of our schools, and especially our students are in helping Wisconsin get this vaccine out to the public. It is a real-life embodiment of the Wisconsin idea, and I am very excited that we're encouraging and rewarding these efforts through the tuition credit. And over the past months, you've frequently heard me praise the campuses and the members of my own team for their tireless work in responding to the COVID pandemic. Their commitment has been vitally important to the success of these efforts. But I wanted to take a moment today to single out one individual in particular for this service. And after his retirement from the UW system presidency and during a period of transition, Ray Cross remained with us as a consultant. I'm very happy that he did. Not only was it a huge challenge to become UW system president under trying circumstances, but it quickly became clear to me that I had a job for Ray for which he was uniquely qualified as an engineer and a national and state higher education leader. Planning for the safe reopening of our University of Wisconsin campuses for the fall semester was job one. And I asked Ray to take the lead on researching COVID-19 testing on campuses, and we're all fortunate he did. Ray was instrumental in helping us develop the testing program that made our campuses safe and drew the attention of national public health experts like Dr. Robert Redfield and Dr. Deborah Burks. And last summer, the spectrum of testing option was limited and unclear, with new technology only beginning to become available. And Ray spent countless hours researching the virus and the available tests, and also consulting with medical experts. In that role, he was a key member of our COVID operations team that still meets daily upstairs to review our response to the pandemic and the situation at our universities and our communities. He presented to us a recommendation that we use antigen testing, and we were the first major university to do that in the country. And now most athletic teams are using the antigen test in a lot of states, and Quiddell says that we were their number one customer, particularly in congregate areas like residence halls, as a means to provide our universities with an early warning of potential outbreaks on campus. That concept paid enormous dividends, as we've seen over the past several months. And he has continued to remain a part of our operations team as a volunteer. So I just wanted to say thank you, Ray. Legislative updates. Now I'd like to quickly provide the board with a brief legislative update. With the governor announcing his budget proposal on February 16th, we're continuing to have great conversations with the administration and legislative leaders, including Speaker Voss, in support of our budget request. Last week, I sat down with new Senate Majority Leader Devin LeMahieu and the Senate Health Committee Chair Patrick Teston to discuss our requests. The response to date has been positive, And I think one of the reasons it's been positive is they've seen all the positive press we've been getting about testing, vaccinations, and opening up our campuses and keeping them open. The response to date, as I've said, has been positive. And I believe there's a real interest from both the legislature and the administration now to partner with the UW. Our chancellors are working hard in advocacy as well, and I'm confident we're going to see a robust operating and capital budget from the governor. We've been talking to the governor's office, and everything, and most of the initiatives that I've talked to the board about, I hope will be included. Can't say that they are, but I hope that they will be. On the federal side, we're closely tracking the executive orders issued by President Biden, and many of which have a direct impact on our universities and our students. These orders have included efforts to preserve DACA, extend the pause of federal student loan payments and collections through September 30th, 2021, as well as providing additional guidance from the Departments of Education and Health and Human Services to institutions of higher education relating to reopening and in-person instruction. We're also working with each of our UW universities to develop plans for how best to use the federal funding that they're going to receive from the latest COVID relief bill passed by Congress. And I believe Sean Nelson has talked to several of your committees this morning to tell you how well we're going to be doing as far as federal money. We do expect there may be another federal COVID bill, and we're hopeful that that is true as well. And while we don't yet know the size and scope of that bill, we're pressing hard through our congressional delegation to make sure that the UW system's needs are heard by our delegation. We're also currently updating our annual federal agenda, which identifies and defines the UW system's priorities at the federal level, both as individual universities and as a system. The Regents and Chancellors will have the opportunity to review this agenda before it is finalized and before we present it to our congressional delegation in March. The pre-college pipeline update, along with the Regent Scholarship, which we announced with the board in the last board meeting, we announced this one, the pre-college pipeline update. When I first started as president, I was called all the chancellors, as you would expect somebody to do, and I talked to the chancellor of Platteville, Dennis, and he said, you know, you're talking about bringing in students of color and first-generation students from families. He said, that's all well and good, but if you really want to be successful, Tommy, you've got to put some counselors into the high schools to help students get ready for college. And he said, we're not going to be successful unless you do that. And I took that to heart, and we developed the pre-college pipeline update, and we raised the money for laying off individuals in our offices here at Central Administration. And we set aside $1 million for the pre-college pipeline. And we let the universities bid on it, and we picked 5 winners. Not everybody's happy, but the ones that won are, and 5 colleges received it, and it's called the Pre-College Pipeline, and it received a great deal of positive press this week. This pre-college pipeline is going to place student coaches and recruiters in a select number of regional high schools to try to encourage prospective students to find their way into one of our 13 UW universities. It builds on a strong partnership between the UW system and local high schools, high school counselors, and other community organizations that serve young people. The UW system is making an additional investment, I said, of $1 million to support this initiative. The inaugural round of UW institutions taking part in this pre-college pipeline is going to include UW-Oshkosh, UW-Parkside, UW-Platteville, UW-Stout, and UW-Whitewater. And they've already developed aggressive programs to put counselors and advisors into high schools this spring. And each of these universities are going to receive $200,000 to develop and implement pre-college activities and programs that best serve the needs of students in their respective areas. This effort is part of a series of strategic investments the UW system is making to help get more Wisconsin students into college and to earn degrees. President Peterson mentioned earlier the Wisconsin Regents Opportunity Scholarship, and that was the first step, and this is the second step, which is also going to serve to encourage more young people to consider college as a real possibility. And I hope and I believe the Board of Regents should take a lot of credit for this and be very supportive. It's going to serve, I think, to encourage a lot of young people that never even thought about going to college to consider college as a real possibility. This is all about helping the people of this great state to take advantage of the incredible opportunities in front of them, which ultimately will benefit all of us. That concludes my report, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity, President Peterson, to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, President Thompson, for that full report. As longtime board members, you're aware our February meeting is traditionally hosted by UW-Madison. This time last year, the board was touring new campus buildings, attending a performance of the UW-Madison Symphony Orchestra, and holding meetings at Union South amid crowds of busy students excited to start the new semester. That was the board's last in-person meeting before the pandemic fully hit. Now our usual meeting room at Union South is serving as a COVID-19 testing location. Chancellor Rebecca Blank has joined us today to discuss how UW-Madison has continued moving forward during this challenging year. Chancellor Blank, good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you very much. And I'm always delighted to see everyone, even if it's virtual. I'm very sorry that we couldn't give you lunch, and I'm particularly sorry I can't have you all over to my house tonight for dinner. But given how hard it's snowing outside right now in Madison, you may be happy you're not in Madison. So this past year has been a challenging time. And I like to say we're in the midst of three crises here on campus. The first crisis, of course, is the COVID crisis. Out of that comes the second crisis, the financial and budget crisis. And at the same time, we're also dealing with a racial justice crisis with a very heightened sense of urgency around issues related to racism and social justice. And I want to talk a little bit about how we're handling these challenges and how we're looking forward to post-pandemic opportunities. So this year, we've lost a lot of the celebratory events that make being around a university so much fun. We didn't have convocation. We didn't have commencement. We aren't having conferences or concerts or athletic competitions. Nobody's gathering on the terrace. And that makes this a harder place and a less fun place. And we've lost some of those personal interactions. A big university like this is just fun because you bump up against people. You meet folks who are very different from you, and that expands your worldview. You have a chance to work with and talk with world-class faculty, or you have an opportunity to come to a seminar, have coffee with someone afterwards, and launch a whole new research agenda. So, it's been a different place with COVID, but we have continued to focus on our missions of education and research and outreach, and are planning to use everything we've learned in this past year to build better educational opportunities for students in the future, and to figure out how what we've learned gives us new ways of doing business as we move forward. So let me start by giving you a sense of how we met some of the three challenges of these past 11 months. And I'll start with the COVID crisis in education. As you know, we sent everyone home in mid-March. We redesigned the entire instructional model in 10 days. We converted 8,000 classes from in-person to online work, and including some things that you could never imagine us being able to teach online. And our instructors got really creative. So, for instance, music instructors found ways for student ensembles to perform together virtually. And I'm sure everyone now has seen some of these, Zoom presentations with music that are just amazing to me. Art instructors worked with our MFA students who lost the opportunity to exhibit their senior thesis projects. So instead, they installed them virtually all around the world. And here's a project that was virtually installed at the Mitchell Park Domes. And then there's a lot of learning by doing going on in this process. So Li Chaoping, who's one of really an internationally known dance instructor, adjusted how she taught dance classes online. She started in her living room as she was teaching these classes online, but soon realized that her students were in much more constrained spaces than she was. So she moved to her office so that she and her students were both in spaces with similar constraints. A small issue, but one that really improved the whole teaching environment. To bring students back in person in the fall and to run a more hybrid model of instruction, we created enormous numbers of new policies and new health protocols. We purchased almost 2 million masks and 7,300 gallons of hand sanitizer. We tested airflow and ventilation in every building on campus. We rearranged every classroom, every workspace, every public space to deal with public distancing. We studied pedestrian patterns and changed the class schedule so that there weren't as many people bumping up against each other in the hallway at the same time. We stood up testing facilities. We administered 148,000 tests during fall semester and built our own labs for processing most of those tests. We set up spaces for quarantine and isolation, and we put a public dashboard out so people could, on a daily basis, follow how we are doing. So this is what our positivity rates looked like over the fall, and this is actually the number of infections. And I think, as you all know, we had this huge spike at the end of the first week and brought it down very quickly. It took a lot of immediate measures there. And after the middle and 20th of September onward, our positivity rates were below those of the county, and they were far below those of the state. And even there in early November, you see that little bump up where the whole state explodes. And we weren't immune to that, but we kept it under very tight control and were way below anyone else around us. A number of people said we just weren't going to make it through the semester, and we proved them wrong. We also worked very hard, of course, at creating community, particularly for our freshmen. Students got to know others that they might not have met through activities like Zoom talent shows, grocery bingo, and pancakes and pajama parties in the residence halls. Some of them even used the time to start their own businesses. And this is a student who started a business making personalized sneakers for people. If you're interested in purchasing a pair, his company is called Kicks of Chicago. And we worked hard to bring back Badger sports. We worked very closely with the Big Ten to implement extensive health protocols, including daily testing for all of our students and staff. We put the health and safety of our players and our coaches first. That meant we postponed and canceled games when there were health concerns. And we played in an empty Camp Randall, an empty Kohl Center, and an empty LeBron Arena. But we did end the football season on a high note with our big win at the Duke's Mayo Bowl. And we're looking forward to seeing how the season ends for our highly competitive basketball and hockey teams. COVID has also had a deep impact on our research, moving beyond education. We shut down virtually all of our campus research last March, and then slowly reopened it over the spring as we put new health protocols in place. But research activity has become more challenging with continued restrictions on travel, on field work, and on work like observational studies, which simply cannot be done remotely. The good news is that our faculty are using their research time quite productively. Our grant proposals are up 25% from a year ago. Last year, we had $1.3 billion in research expenditures, putting us among the top 10 research universities in the country. Many of our new grant proposals are COVID-related. Not surprisingly, a lot of new money on the table for that. And to date, we've brought in over $51 million in research funding for projects related to coronavirus. And I could spend the next 10 minutes telling you about some great projects. Let me just mention one. Computer science professor Michael Ferris is working to develop optimization models that can be used by states to guide decisions about how to transport, store, and distribute COVID vaccines, something that's going to be both academically interesting but incredibly useful from a practical point of view for the moment that we're at. But of course, we do more than research and education. We also do outreach. And one of the things that the pandemic has demonstrated is the extraordinary value of our outreach and our partnership with the community, what we call the Wisconsin Idea. Faculty and staff have worked hard to advise and assist policymakers and Wisconsin communities and businesses throughout this time. When PPE was running low last summer, our College of Engineering responded by inventing the Badger Shield, a face shield made of materials that are very easy to come by, and it is now in use around the country. When the state requested our help for housing people who were ill but had no safe space in which to isolate, we provided space for them in the Lowell Center. When Wisconsin businesses needed our help, our Small Business Development Center helped them access nearly $7 million in financial aid. And when testing sites in Dane County were overwhelmed, with the help of President Thompson, who generated all these additional Binax tests from the federal government, we were able to administer more than 20,000 free COVID tests to our local community. We're now facing the spring semester. We're into it. School started about a week and a half ago, and there are some different things going on. Most importantly, we have greatly expanded our testing regime. It became very clear around the middle of last semester that the real gold standard for universities was getting all of your students to test twice a week. And we have worked very, very hard to be able to do that as we start this semester. We are requiring every undergraduate who lives in the Madison area, whether they're in our residence halls or at off-campus housing, to test twice each week. We're asking faculty and staff who work on campus to test at least once a week. We're doing almost all of these tests using a system developed at the University of Illinois. It's a saliva-based PCR test that requires you to drool into a test tube. And I can tell you an awful lot more about saliva than I ever thought I wanted to. And we aren't going to go there, but I'd be happy to answer your questions. We are set up and planning to do somewhere between 60 to 80,000 tests a week, with 14 sites on campus running 7 days a week. That means we will very quickly identify students, faculty, and staff who become infectious and help them isolate and move out of the community until they're better. Now, enforcement of this new testing regime works through an app called the Safer Badgers app. Everyone receives results through this app, and when you're up to date on your tests, you get a green Badger badge on your app. This is what mine looks like. We have people stationed at the entrance to virtually all buildings used by students. And to get into any building now, you have to show a green badge. If it's not green, you can't go in and you shouldn't be on campus. You need to go test. But even if you aren't coming to campus on a regular basis, if you are an undergraduate living nearby in Madison, we are still requiring you to test. That's because we care not only about the health of our campus community, but the health of our whole broader Madison community. And our students obviously interact well beyond just the campus community. Now, the biggest good news this winter is the arrival of the vaccine. And if you move on to the next slide, we began vaccinating employees in the phase 1A group on January 5th. This is Eden Charles, a researcher in our School of Medicine and Public Health. This first phase, like everywhere, includes UW-Madison employees at highest risk: medical, nursing, pharmacy, faculty, staff, and students who are caring for COVID patients, researchers who are working directly with the virus, and employees like those in housing whose work puts them at higher risk of coming in contact with students with COVID. And we're now moving into our employees 65 and over. Our goal is not just to vaccinate our own community, but we are in the midst of all sorts of conversations with Public Health Madison-Dane County about opening a community clinic once the dosages become available to also vaccinate targeted groups inside the community that we might be particularly effective at reaching out to. And we've got, of course, the logistics and the spaces to run that type of a clinic. My goal this semester is to vaccinate all of our faculty and staff, if I possibly can. That requires us getting the vaccinations. We have everything set up to do that. And then my next goal is, by the time we reopen in the fall, I want to be able to vaccinate any student who arrives who is not previously vaccinated. And we are set up to do this. We simply need to get the dosages when the time comes. That is the only way that we're going to assure a more normal semester for fall 2021. And we are planning on a more normal semester for fall 2021. So let me move from the COVID crisis into the financial crisis. And I will be very blunt about our financial situation. I know Loren was talking with the Budget and Finance Committee this morning. This past year has been the biggest financial disaster that anyone at UW-Madison has ever seen. Some of you remember the 2014, 15, 16 budget when we really got deep cuts. Our deep cuts were $65 million. This year, if you compare what we thought we would have a year ago before COVID hit, and look at the 15 months from the end of March to the end of the current fiscal year, which is next June, and say, how far in the hole are you? And you add up all of our lost revenues, plus all of the unexpected health-related expenses, we're down $320 million. And, Loren and I occasionally sort of sit around and look at each other and just say, have you ever seen anything like this? And the answer, of course, is no. We are responding very quickly to this. I will note that the impacts have been spread very unevenly, and there's a pie chart coming up here that sort of shows where the losses are. Our biggest losses are in the auxiliary units, and we've lost around $50 million in athletics. We've lost around $50 million in our housing units, and then we've lost about $50 million in lapsed state funds or unpaid pay plan dollars. And these are money that we either had to return to the state or that we never received, even though we were originally promised them. So those three things alone account for half of our loss. Tuition funding is down a little. We've hit our enrollment targets, but we have fewer international students and therefore more in-state students, and that's changed our tuition dollars by just a little bit, but we haven't lost very much on the tuition front. Two really bright spots in our revenue are enrollment in summer programs and professional master programs are way up, so that has not been a problem. And this next one is particularly good news. Our philanthropy is largely holding steady. Many other schools have seen alumni giving decline significantly this year. I was talking to someone at the University of Iowa about some of the problems they were facing, and this simply has not happened at UW-Madison. And I give all of our wonderful alums and the foundation real credit for the work that they're doing on that. To manage these financial losses, we need both short-term and long-term fixes, right? So we fortunately started this year in a very strong financial position, and that meant we had money we were going to invest in new programs that instead we immediately pulled together and started dumping into filling the hole of our revenue losses. We've also put a substantial amount of reserves into that. As you also know, we've received some federal dollars that have helped us on this front. And we took immediate action to reduce expenses. We're facing a big short-term cash flow problem, and you've got to cut expenses in that situation. We immediately froze salaries. We've frozen most hiring. We've pulled back all our budget distributions for next year. And then, that wasn't enough. And we have had to, for a full year, and this will last through next June, implement mandatory monthly furloughs for all of our employees, which is essentially a pay cut because they take unpaid furlough days every month, as well as a voluntary 15% pay cut that all of the senior leaders at the university have taken. And I want to emphasize this. Our staff and faculty will have a full year of mandatory furlough days. That will amount to them to between a 2.5% and a 4.6% pay cut. We've implemented these progressively, so lower wage workers get less of a pay cut. But this is not a small financial sacrifice, and I really want to express my gratitude to all of our employees for their willingness to take these cuts. It's not easy for many of them, even though we have tried to protect the lowest paid workers. Even with all of those actions, we still, by our estimates, we're about $35 million gap between where we needed to be and where we were. So we've also announced base budget cuts this year and next year for all of our units, so between 4 to 8% to make up this gap. And every one of our units is either in the midst of taking this year's cuts and planning for next year's. Now, those actions are all pretty dramatic. I say there is a financial crisis out there, but what we've done reflects the magnitude of the issues that we're facing. And, we can't get out of this with 1 year. We have to amortize these losses over at least another year. I am very much hoping if we do this right, and I think we have done all of the right planning and all the right actions, that if we have this year and next year with a very tight budget and dealing with these budget cuts, that 2 years from now, this is all going to be past us. That, by and large, in 2 years, we can get through this pandemic and and not have any further carryover. Now, the thing that will really throw a wrench into that is what's going to happen in the current state budget. Because if we were to get further budget cuts for the next 2 years, on top of the enormous financial losses we've had, that would carry the impact of this pandemic far, far longer on campus. So, it's one of the reasons why I very much thank the Regents for the very strong budget ask that they have made this year. And, getting at least making sure we're not cut. But I know all of you, and President Thompson in particular, are working hard to actually get more GPR dollars. And that's absolutely critical to bringing the university back to solid financial footing. We can't let the dollars that we lost in this state lapse during this past year turn into permanent budget cuts without much deeper financial issues. So GPR dollars are important to us, but secondly, so is borrowing authority. There is not a possible year I could give you that doesn't show the need for us to have some form of borrowing authority within UW-Madison and for the entire system. This is a financial tool available to every one of our peer schools, every other system, every other flagship university in 49 other states. And when you have a short-term cash flow emergency of the sort that we have had, what do you do when you're a $3.4 billion organization? That's UW-Madison, much less a more than $6 billion organization for the system. You spread the current cash flow problem against future good years with borrowing. It's what any institution would do, and it's what every one of our peers would do. To give an example, I noted our athletics department is projected to lose close to $50 million in the pandemic. They're going to pop right back. When everything is back to normal and we're playing games and we've got people in seats, their revenue is coming back. But they have to survive this year. And you don't want them to lay off all of their coaches and close the whole athletics department down, because then they're not going to be able to revive it very quickly come next September. This is exactly the point in which you borrow money. Every other athletic program has worked with their university to borrow money, and we instead are using, chicken wire and masking tape to try to figure out ways through our reserves to make loans and to try to help them get through this time. It's just a crazy way to operate. We need modern financial tools at this university. Third, along the same theme of modern financial tools, we carry a lot of cash, a lot of working capital. That's because our cash comes in lump sums during tuition periods, but it's also because of the way the state operates. We have to hold a lot of cash until we're ready to build a building. We have to get all of our cash together before we can buy a big contract for new IT systems. So we're regularly carrying some real working capital sums. The way the state currently writes its statutes, we basically hold that under our mattress. We get virtually nothing for it. Again, every other institution of our magnitude and size has the ability to manage their working capital more intelligently, whereby you take at least some share of that and invest it in intermediate sort of accounts that let us earn at least, 2%, 3% on the money. Now, that might sound like a small fix. For UW-Madison, that change is worth $10 to $20 million a year. That's real money to us. And again, giving us modern financial tools for this is absolutely mandatory. And if we can't argue it and make it happen this year, I don't know what it's going to take. Finally, fourth, and I'm going to mention the capital budget. We obviously have problems of deferred maintenance. The capital planning budget has heard us talk about that too many times, as well as all the other schools are talking about it. But we also have to replace some very obsolete buildings with modern and much needed facilities that give us the ability to teach better, to do better research, to attract faculty, and to be better environmental stewards of our properties. The two buildings that are in the budget that we very much hope the governor will send forward and the state will approve are both partly donor funded. In both cases, we're raising about a third of the money needed for the building, but asking the state to cover the other 2/3, one an engineering building and one the humanities building in LNS. And a number of you a year ago, they had the pleasure of touring those particularly obsolete and outmoded buildings and really got a sense of how bad they are and how badly we need to replace them. Let me move into the third crisis, the racial justice crisis. We aim to provide a welcoming and an excellent educational experience to every one of our students. But we know that too many of our students of color report at times that they feel isolated or even unwelcome. we've been working on a number of fronts to improve diversity and inclusion at UW-Madison, and this is not just a response to what happened last summer. We have had, steady strategic plans and moving things forward and implementing new programs, have made progress on this, bit by bit every year, and we continue to push on this. Protests across the country, however, and here in Madison last summer, really brought a new level of urgency to all of this work. And we're responding in all sorts of different ways. And again, I could spend the next 10 minutes talking about the whole range of things that have been underway and that are have been more newly started. Our freshman class this year includes a record-setting share of students from underrepresented groups. And we have a relatively new vice provost for admissions and recruitment. And one of the main charges he's been given is to increase those numbers. We also have more students of color in our overall undergraduate class by far than we have ever had before. The new class of faculty that we welcomed in August, we welcomed a very large number of faculty last year before all this crisis hit, that had 85 faculty of color in it, and we made huge progress. Now, some of that is because we put out on the table 2 years ago something called our Targets of Opportunity program that helps departments go after people from groups that are not well represented in their fields. And this has led to a substantial increase in hiring African American faculty, Native American faculty, women in science. One can go after people whose academic work and philosophical perspective is different from anyone else you have in the field. It's broad. And I'm going to continue to put money into that even in the midst of our financial crisis. We can't let go on this program. We have to keep pushing. Every one of our units, each of our schools and colleges and our administrative units, now each has its own diversity and inclusion plan that's geared towards who they are and what they need to work on. And that type of work on the ground, in many ways, is going to end up being more important than anything we do and push from the center. So I really want to thank the deans, the unit heads, and all the people underneath them who are working and implementing those plans as well. But make no mistake, there's more work to be done. This is always something that is in progress. And we need all of our students to know how to interact in a multicultural and multiracial world. And we're going to constantly be seeking ways to improve that. So let me look forward, and let me start with good news. There's always good news at UW-Madison, and I want to end on a high note. Let me mention 4 pieces of really good news. Number 1, we continue to attract renowned scholars. During those bad years of that budget cuts of 2013 and 2015, we lost some of our really top faculty. And of course, our top faculty are big grant getters, major reputation people, and we have had to hire to replace them. And this past year, not the COVID year, but the year before that, we hired a record number of 171 new faculty who've all come into the university this past fall and who bring in major grants and help us attract top students. The $1.3 billion in research funding that we bring in each year is one of the main reasons, and it comes from these faculty, one of the main reasons we have a significant economic impact on the state. And just to tease, we're going to be releasing our latest economic impact study next week, so look for that. Number 2, we continue to make progress on access and affordability. We've created over 5,000 new scholarships in the last 5 years for students at all levels. Since we started Bucky's Tuition Promise, which I announced in February of 3 years ago, 2,800 Wisconsin residents and 1 in 5 of our in-state freshmen are now attending UW-Wisconsin with a guarantee of 4 years of coverage of all tuition and fees. And, I continue to push the message. If you're a low-income student in the state of Wisconsin and you get admitted to UW-Madison, we will make sure you can afford to come. Of course, with these expansions in affordability and scholarships, we've reduced debt levels. People no longer have to take out the loans, and I'm very proud of this number. Last spring, 57% of our seniors graduated with 0 debt. And whatever you hear about debt crises around the country for college students, it is not true here at UW-Madison. Thirdly, we continue to see improvements in what are already very, very strong academic outcomes. Our 6-year graduation rate was the highest ever this last year at almost 89%. That puts us among the top 10 public universities in terms of graduation rates. Furthermore, the graduation gap between white students and targeted minority students has fallen significantly in the last 10 years. And we have a new record for time to degree, which affects debt. The faster you graduate, the less you need to worry about loans. Time to degree now averages 3.92 years, 4 weeks less than 4 years. The Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, one of our major national organizations that we belong to, recognized us this fall as one of 4 universities in the country that's done an exceptional job of improving our graduation numbers while reducing graduation gaps. Finally, lastly, we continue to be a hot school. The demand for our degrees continues to grow. Our applications closed on February 1st, so these numbers are hot off the press, and they will move around a little bit yet, but you're the first ones to receive them. Our applications for next year's freshman class are up 17%. We are going to have close to 53,000 applications for about 7,500 slots. Only 10 years ago, we had half that number. And it's not by chance that our applications have doubled. We are a better school. We are advertising ourselves better. Our reputation has grown. And, our admissions and financial aid offices are working better than ever to do outreach and to attract great students. The foundation of future strength at a university, you can tell pretty quickly by looking at their application numbers, and we're in good shape there. Finally, we continue to improve and innovate. And just to mention a few things going on that I'm very excited about. We always have some new degrees that we're working on, and you folks have approved these. But let me note first that we discontinued 8 degrees this last year, but we've created 8 new degrees, the type of sort of intellectual change you always see happening at universities. So, for instance, we've added 2 new undergraduate majors, one in supply chain management at the business school and one in global health that's at the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Secondly, last year, I told you a lot about our new School of Computer Data and Information Sciences, which had just opened the previous fall. It is going wonderfully. Our latest count right now in a new school is we have 2,400 undergraduate majors and nearly 900 graduate students in CDIS, in the School of Computer Data and Information Science. And as we've hoped, the school is increasingly becoming not just a great place for majors, but also a place that serves the whole university, all of which need to understand how to understand technology and information. So one data programming course that was offered last semester and aimed at students who were not data science majors enrolled students from 72 different majors from outside of this school. And, the school does have this dual mission of create stronger and deeper reputation and strength in the computer data and information field, but also outreach and serve the rest of the university as well. Finally, while we have long taught some online courses, we've had some online professional master's degree programs for years, and we've expanded those, and many of our summer courses are offered online. We this year launched our first online undergraduate degree program as a pilot. It was an interesting year to be doing a pilot, but a good year to be doing an online degree program. And this coming September, we're now rolling out a full slate of online undergraduate degrees aimed at older students who are not going to come to UW-Madison for residential education, who have some college degree and understand they're now at a point they need to complete that. We're going to be rolling out 4 new online degree programs, most of them in the business area, which is where the demand is usually the strongest. And this is a big effort. It requires a big investment because online courses require different marketing, different recruitment, different advertising, and different support services. But we're quite committed to this. We've made the investment, and we are ready to make this successful. So, ask me next year about how this is going. It has, on a number of dimensions, been a difficult year, and I very much hope that this next fall is going to be much more of a return to normal. But returning to normal does not mean going back to what we have done in the past. We have learned something from this past year, and we need to figure out what we've learned and how we use it when we return to, what have been more normal operations. So, for instance, we've learned to work differently, and in some cases to work better with much more telecommuting, much more use of distance meetings, and we've got to figure out how to really incorporate that long-term into our business. It means that we can use space more efficiently, for instance. We've learned how to use online educational technologies in ways that can improve learning, even in traditional in-person classes. The provost in the education committee talked about what people have learned about course design and how they've rearranged and redesigned their courses and how that is going to improve future education. And we've reaffirmed the value of scientific research to this nation in a moment of crisis. Our faculty and our researchers, in partnership with researchers all around the world, have helped us in an amazingly short period of time understand how to deal with this virus and help to create the knowledge necessary to develop vaccines in record time. Over this past year, there have been too many days where it's felt like we're simply managing every change that comes at us with a crisis a day. And I really want and look forward to getting back to a operating mode which is less reactive and much more forward-thinking and strategic. If this past year has been a time of simply managing change, next year has to be a time of looking forward, being strategic, incorporating the learning that we all have gained over this year, getting out of our financial problems, and moving forward in good ways. As I said, by next fall, my goal is to make sure all of our employees and students are vaccinated and able to engage fully and in person in all of the experiences that a top-ranked residential university should provide. And if we do this right, if we do it right, we will emerge from this pandemic stronger than we ever were. So thank you very much. Let me stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Well, thank you, Chancellor Blank. You're one of the most rapid speakers I've ever had the pleasure to listen to. You've covered tremendous ground in a short period of time. I thank you for that. You know, I also want to thank you and your staff for the commitments that you've made to us, the system. It was only 7 months ago that we were going through all of the challenges about opening reentry, and you think about how we've done the second semester and how much more efficient and seamless it's been. It's because of the learnings that we had of that first experience in the fall, and you were a very strong leader, as your team was, and learned new experiences that you, I'm sure, never anticipated. I also want to recognize you for your financial commitment and your discipline through this time, as you outlined significant financial pressures, and you've had to do as much as anybody to try and overcome that and endure that. And then the final thing I would mention is your commitment to diversity and inclusion, as you highlighted. Despite the financial challenges that we're facing, it's too important to not address that issue. And you've not only leaned into it, you've advanced it in a very, very rapid way, which I know this full board is certainly appreciative of. With that, I want to thank you for your leadership and that of your team, and then I'll turn it over to Regents for questions of the Chancellor.
Thank you.
Regent Greeby, start with you.
You're on mute still, Michael.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
You're good.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Chancellor Blank. As always, an excellent presentation. I wanted to ask you to maybe dive in a little deeper into one of the things you raised. I think in the past, you and I have talked about the fact that the cost of education is not limited to tuition. It's a much broader issue than that. And one of the important questions is, how long does it take students to get through college if they want to get through in 4, 5, 6 years? You cited some remarkable statistics. Can you talk a little bit about why UW-Madison has performed so well and what you think has led to your success in those areas?
Yeah, so, I'm a very strong believer that if you want to reduce the cost of college, you don't freeze tuition. You reduce the time it takes for people to graduate, because saving a semester will save you thousands and thousands of dollars more than you would save through a tuition freeze over 4 years. I just make that comment should any of you be thinking about tuition freezes. In my first fall, I actually called our group together, and, we were sort of in the middle of the pack on graduation rates, and I thought our time to graduation was higher than it should have been. And I asked them to come with, a list of ideas, because, I was still new at the university, of things that we could work on that would reduce time to graduation. And we sat down together in a couple of meetings and put together a list of 15 things to work on. And some of the good thing about most of this was most of them were actually not high-cost items. Expanding scholarships and accessibility, that was a high cost item on the list, and we've worked hard on that. And that has been very important because, students often take fewer credits if they're in some financial trouble because they have to work harder, or they drop out altogether, and then they're at risk of not even coming back and graduating. So, the expansion of, through Bucky's Tuition Promise and through other scholarship expansion is, I would probably list as number one, and we put a lot of new money into that. But the other things are not really rocket science, but you had to look at them. One thing we did was we graphed time to degree by department for undergraduates and compared it to time to degree by department among our peer schools. And it turns out we had a number of schools where their time to degree was a year longer than their peer departments. And, my folks went to those departments and said, what's going on? And in most cases, they said, oh, we didn't know that. And in many cases, this was simple things. It was like curricular requirements that hadn't been modernized, or a program, a class that was required that they'd skipped teaching 1 or 2 years. And so students had to stay an extra year to finish all their requirements. And, curricular changes and attention to, do we have, and to advising, do we have what we need to get through? And, the other piece of this is advising. And my predecessors had put a lot of money into advising. They restructured the advising, and I got the benefit of a lot of much better advising across the department to get students through. And, to name the last one, which this was just, I thought, an easy one. It turns out that one of our schools and colleges never required students to declare a major. So people could be at the end of their 4th year and not yet have declared a major. Well, guess what? If you don't push students to declare majors, some small number of students are just going to keep taking classes and not focused. We now require students to declare majors, and they might change them. That's allowable, but it means they have to go see advisors. They have to focus on what they're interested in. And, and we've really staffed up career advising as well, which helps this. So, there's a whole range of things. So this is not there's a single magic bullet here. It's thinking about all of the things that make it easier for students to get through school, and, get their degree and move on. And, we've still got things we're working on that list of 15, and we've added a couple of new things since then.
Other questions of Regents? Regent Klein?
Thank you, Chancellor Blank. What a great presentation. And I always feel strongly that UW-Madison is in good hands when you describe, the challenges and how they've been met. So thank you for that. I'm so happy to hear that you're not relenting on the D&I front. I think that's critical. The issues have only gotten worse, and I do think there's a historic catch-up that we have to, be aware of at University of Wisconsin-Madison. And to me, that's great news that we're putting more behind that. One thing that I don't understand, I understand $300 million and the enormity of that number, but I don't see how we close that gap efficiently or well. And from my perspective, I know you talked about additional GPR revenue, but that seems hard, especially with all the challenges the state has. And, if tuition doesn't go up, how are we really realistically going to close that? That's question number one, close that gap. And then the second question is, what are we doing on additional bonding authority for UW system and or UW-Madison? Because that's one of my, pet issues, I guess, and I'd like to see that move ahead. So I'll stop there. But again, great job.
Yeah, thank you, Regent Klein. Let me say a word about, I want to be clear about that $320 million gap. This is not a long-term budget shortfall. This is a short-term cash flow problem. I am short $320 million this year. But if I'm back to normal operations next year, again, without any state budget cuts, I'm not going to be short any money. Now, I don't think I'm going to be fully back to normal operations. There'll still be some health expenses, but this is so you've got and of that $320 million, some of it I never spent because we've cut down on our expenses. Some of it we got back from the federal government. So you end up being able to, so what you're amortizing here is sort of like a big blob that goes into the snake, and then, you sort of want to work it out as you go through. It's not a permanent gap. You're right. If I were down $320 million, and I had to deal with that and really cut that amount of money out of the university, I'd be in deep trouble. But I don't. I have a single $320 million shortfall that I have to work with over time. Okay? And all of the steps we've taken are such that I think we can largely be past that once we're through the next year. And, God willing that we don't hit the next crisis, right? In terms of bonding authority, I have talked several times with the governor about this. I've had conversations now with almost all members of the Joint Finance Committee. I've talked to the heads of both the Senate and the Assembly Educational Committee. Some are more willing than others, but I should actually kick this over to President Thompson because he's, of course, leading the charge in terms of things in the budget that need to get fixed, and he will be even more up to date than I in his response to what's happening on this front.
Basically, the Chancellor is absolutely correct. There's a lot of people that are adamantly, and I mean adamantly opposed to giving us bonding authority. And other ones are willing to make a deal. I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to put together a deal when we go through the budgetary fight. We need it. We need, as the Chancellor said, vocational schools have it. We don't. Every other institution across the state, across the country, has bonding authority. We don't. Why we don't, there's a long-standing thing that goes clear back to the Constitution that says that we should not be able to borrow or bond. It's just archaic and it's wrong. And I'm doing everything I possibly can to talk to legislators, as the Chancellor has, to convince them that we need that opportunity in order to run this huge institution. And that's why I'm trying to show the state and legislators how important it is to allow the University of Wisconsin to have some flexibility, because we're doing so many good things like testing, like vaccination, like getting students hired, like no matter what the situation is, the University of Wisconsin is leading. And I love that. I love to lead. And the other thing is that we have to convince the legislature that this is the right thing. We also have to convince the governor, because he's not totally sold yet on bonding. I'm fairly certain, I've talked to him, I'm fairly certain that he will sign it if we can get it in, but I'm not sure he's going to put it in his budget bill. Hope he does, but I'm not sure he's going to. So it's a long uphill push, and I need all of your help, as the Chancellor does, for you to contact him. We need it for the athletic department, and we're going to hear from them shortly. And I'm hopeful the fact that the athletic department is going to be up in the Capitol, also arguing for it, that maybe the sheer number and the force of athletics, the Chancellor, myself, and you, the Board of Regents, we may get some action this year. We need it, and we got the arguments for it, and hopefully we'll be successful.
Yeah, and I should note the working capital abilities are a much smaller lift, and I'm much more hopeful about that if we can actually get people to pay attention. It's like a 2-word change in statute, and that one should just be completely non-controversial. Should we be able to earn 2% on our cash holdings as opposed to 0? That seems like an easy answer.
Why we should not be able to borrow $50 to $100 million when we need it? Every other business does, and I think the arguments are on our side. The argument pushback is you don't need it, we don't trust you, and we're not going to do it. And so hopefully we're going to be able to convince them that's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Regent Klein. Regent Bechtel.
Thank Chancellor Blank and her leadership. We spent some time in business and finance. I just want to point out a couple of things for the other regents. The UW-Madison Economic Impact Board, as Chancellor Blank indicated, was going to be updated and sent, I think, as early as next week, so keep your eye on that. And then Becky and her team are doing something really remarkable, and there's a lot of constituencies that she's dealing with, and I really appreciate her leadership and the whole team at Madison. The Revenue Innovation Study Group Report is another document that's available to us. And I would encourage our regents to take a look at that. And it really, Becky, I understand the three different buckets of issues that you go through, but on this budget and that more long-term type of challenge that you identified, we've got to make the investments in our laboratories and our instructional space and our IT. We've got to attract more federal grants and private companies and are doing their R&D, which you've indicated, and I know you're leading on that. We've got to invest with our faculty to make sure we're attracting the best and the brightest who then can be those magnets towards research dollars and R&D dollars from the private sector. This is going to build our talent pipeline in the state. This keeps us at the forefront of research and development in a top research institution. And the weight will fall heavier on the shoulders of our colleagues in Madison, given its R1 research institution facility, as well as our friends at UW-Milwaukee. And so I think it's fair to ask a little more of those research institutions in these areas. And I love within the innovation ideas, the idea of looking at real estate and other assets, and how do we take these underutilized assets and begin to monetize them, begin to figure out ways to build infrastructure, regional development, working with our communities and our local partners. These are big issues, really exciting issues, and I just applaud Chancellor Blank for taking this on, because I think in some ways what you're doing at Madison is I know this is happening on other campuses, but this is going to be helping us throughout the system to look for the very best ideas. So thank you, Becky, Chancellor Blank, and please know that we want to understand how we can help with this lift, how we can partner, any reformations we can make, any rulemaking on our side, and then also, as Governor Thompson has indicated, with the legislative efforts. So really exciting stuff. Yeah. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Regent Bechtel. And, this Revenue Innovations Report is sort of the looking forward, our strategic plan of what else we are going to do in addition to what we've been doing to expand our investment dollars, which we absolutely have to do. If we don't grow and invest in new programs, we will steadily drop relative to our peers. And I want to keep up with my peers. I want to exceed my peers. And as you all know, we've been doing a number of things. You've helped me right-size out-of-state tuition. You've helped me, do something in terms of the mix of in and out-of-state students. We've expanded our summer programs. We've got a great campaign going with all of our alumni. Those are the things we've been working on, and this Revenue Enhancement Report is the next set of things that we want to take on, which are a little more complex and not quite as easy a lift, and we are going to need the help of the Regents to do some of them. So thank you, Scott.
Okay, any other questions of board members? All right, scouring the, yep, Dr. Hall.
Yeah, this is just a comment. I just want to say kudos again to you, Chancellor Blank. You have been through a lot, and you always come through as a strong leader. And, I am passionate about inclusion, and you've not missed a beat on that. So just thank you for your consistency.
Thank you, Regent Hall.
All right, one last call of Regents. Seeing no further questions, as usual, Chancellor Blank, thank you for all your leadership and your information sharing. This has been very, very enlightening.
Next year in Madison.
Yeah. Don't we know it? We're now going to turn to athletics, and the Board of Regents has reporting guidelines for UW institutions that participate in NCAA Division I athletics to annually provide information regarding academic compliance matters. This accountability framework allows the board to provide proper oversight and also safeguard the well-being and success of UW system student athletes. It also provides an opportunity for us to review the financial viability of UW athletic programs, which we've just discussed, and how they contribute to the institution's academic and cultural missions. Today we'll hear that report from UW-Madison Athletic Director Barry Alvarez, as well as Deputy Athletic Director Chris McIntosh. Director Alvarez, welcome, and I'll turn the meeting over to you to begin with your annual update and introductions and report. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you. First, I want to begin by extending my condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of José Delgado. I had the opportunity to meet him a few years ago at an Orange Bowl function. Chris McIntosh and I were assigned dinner at his table, and before we left dinner, we were like long lost friends. He made friends very quickly, and we became very good friends, and my condolences. It's difficult to summarize this past year. We've all been faced with challenges and adversity that we never would have imagined. Our student athletes, coaches, and staff have met this adversity with courage, patience, and persistence. I'm particularly proud of how our student athletes have handled their academic work. Our athletes combined for a 3.306 grade point average for all of our student athletes this past fall. 75% of our student athletes had at least a 3.0 grade point average. 108 fall sports student athletes were named academic All Big Ten. 13 sports had their highest regular semester grade point average on record. I can't say enough about everyone in the athletic department who's gone above and beyond to allow our teams to first start their seasons and now to continue them. Our student athletes want to compete, and they've done everything possible to keep them, and we've done everything possible to keep them safe through this testing and emphasizing a variety of the best safety practices. When we've also decided when we have decided to halt practices and competition, it's always been for their welfare and safety. I thought I would give you a little bit of an idea of what we had to go through to play and participate this fall. If you remember, our chancellors and presidents postponed the season at one point this fall. The reason for that being there were just too many question marks about COVID, too many things unanswered, and there was not a comfortable feeling of safety for our student athletes. So we were put on pause. The athletic directors were then put in a process where we felt it was important that we find a way to start football, see if we could play football, if it would be possible. So 3 committees were formed. Probably the most important was the medical subcommittee. The medical subcommittee was established to establish protocol for all 14 teams, for them to follow, to answer testing questions, when to quarantine, all the things that everyone had to do to make us feel comfortable that our student athletes, coaches, and everyone associated with the game would be safe and healthy. As you remember, weekly we had new information about the virus. We had new information about testing. So it was a constantly moving target, which this committee still meets and comes up with best practices. We had a return to competition committee. Let me backtrack. We had two of our staff members, Katie Smith, our senior women's administrator, and Dr. Ann Sheehy, who's a faculty rep, were on that medical subcommittee. We had a return to competition committee, which I chaired, that consisted of athletic directors and coaches. We were charged to find a way to put a schedule together that made sense, a schedule that ended so that the student athletes would have enough time to recover to play a normal 21 season, to make it meaningful. If the schedule weren't meaningful, we would have a number of players that would opt out. A schedule that ended in time for our student athletes who chose to move forward into the NFL had an opportunity to participate in the combine. So all these were factors that we had to work in. We presented 3 models to the chancellors and presidents. They chose the 8+1 model, which we instituted and carried out. We had several games during the season that were not played, but for the most part, we did have a meaningful season. The third committee was the TV subcommittee, which worked directly with Fox, ESPN, and BTN. For every schedule that came out, the networks had to approve them, with them always looking for exclusivity when possible, and things that made the most sense. So they were really cooperative as we went through the process. I think I would be remiss if I did not mention Chancellor Blank throughout this process. She was a leader in the room of chancellors and presidents. She has turned into a voice of college athletics, testifying in behalf of the NCAA, and she was very helpful throughout this process, and certainly want to thank her for all her efforts that she put in. The COVID-19 pandemic, of course, had enormous financial impact on our department. Despite months of furloughs, reductions in compensation, we're all looking at a net loss of around $47 million. But it's been really impressive to watch our staff step up when needed and where needed, whether it be helping with testing of our student athletes, which those that competed tested daily, whether it be serving food in the training table to our student athletes, whatever was needed. Those within our athletic department stepped up and crossed over into other facilities to make things happen, allow our student athletes compete. Were it not for our history of a sound financial management, we would be facing an even worse situation that we're in now. 2020 is also impacted greatly by social unrest and across our country. Our department is committed to safe and inclusive environment for all, and I'm very pleased with the progress we've made in diversity and in the diversity and inclusion space, including establishing a strategic plan, formation of our Equity and Diversity Council, which consists of former athletes, and I'm really proud that 3 of my former football players, Jeff Mack, Calvin Barrett, and Anthony Davis, are part of this group. This group could be a tremendous consultants on the issues at hand. We've also created a hiring of a multicultural marketing and creative agency, and had engagement with our student athletes around collaborative initiatives relating to diversity and inclusion, and internal programming and educational opportunities for our staff. We're looking ahead. College athletic faces a number of changes and challenges in the horizon. It's likely that our student athletes will be able to profit from their own name, image, and likeness. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm for anything that supports our student athletes. But in what form this takes remains to be seen, and we're going to have some limitations and guidelines. We also have to keep the mission of the collegiate education experience at the forefront. We do not want pro sports at the collegiate level. College eligibility issues for student athletes, including their ability to transfer from one institution to another, also will be an issue that we'll have to face in the coming months. At the end of the day, I want to make sure that the welfare and experience of our student athletes remains central to our decision-making, whether it be their health, academic endeavors, or competitive experience. And I thought I would share a philosophy and an attitude that we have within the department. As I interview coaches and as I offer coaching positions, the first question always asked me by the coach is, what do you expect of me? And I know they're expecting me to talk about winning championships and conference championships, national championships, et cetera. I tell them I do expect them to be competitive. With the wherewithal we will give you, we expect you to be competitive. But in the end, when I have my exit interview with a student athlete, I want that athlete to come in and say, you know, Coach, I had support from my coaches on the field, off the field. I grew. I'm walking out of here with they supported me academically. I'm walking out of here with a meaningful degree. And you know what? If I had it all to do over again, I'd come back here to school again. And that's the attitude that I want my coaches to have. I want them to care about their student athletes, and I think that's the type of coaches that we do have. So a lot of things going on, a lot of positive things. We've been through a rough year, and we're hoping to get back to normal next fall. But that's my report, and I have some of my staff with me, Chris McIntosh included. He has some remarks, but be willing to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Director Alvarez. Certainly appreciate your comments. This has been an unprecedented year, and you guys have weathered this storm. You men and women have weathered this storm to the best of your ability. You've always been a huge contributor to the overall success of the UW-Madison. That continues even under these financial pressures. You heard us talk perhaps previously about the importance of bonding and what that could do for the athletic department in this type of crisis. I don't expect you to weigh in on that, but know that that's a top priority of ours as we pursue our biannual budget. And I think the illustrations that we can bring to the table about what this means for college athletics, what it means for the student athlete experience, what it means for the UW-Madison campus, and what it means for the state of Wisconsin. You know, we've got to have those sorts of financial instruments at our disposal, and please recognize that'll be a case that we'll be making from now until June. Questions for Director Alvarez from the board? I've got to be patient to look through all of these Hollywood squares, but I think you've stumped the board, which is a testament to your discipline, that of your team, you know, your commitment to compliance, your highlighting of diversity and inclusion, all things that this board cares deeply about. I think President Thompson wants to make a few remarks, and then we'll hear from Deputy Athletic Director McIntosh. President.
Hello, Barry. How are you? Barry, I'm going to be calling upon you and Chris to join with me up at the Capitol once the budget gets going through, and I hope that we can go up like we used to do when we're trying to get the fields done, the field house and the field done. You were very good at going with me to talk to legislators, and I hope you'll allow me to call upon you and Chris to come with me, and when we go up on the bonding issue, because it's going to be very important, and it's not going to be an easy fight. But I know you need the bonding authority that Madison, well, the whole university system needs it, and it's just sad that we haven't been able to do it. So I'm going to be calling upon you to go with me when we go up there to lobby for it.
Very good. I'll be glad to join you.
Any other questions for Director Alvarez? Regent Walsh? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Director Alvarez, for that information. Given the financial challenges that the department is facing this year as a result of COVID, are you at all concerned about any of the non-revenue generating, or are any of them possibly in jeopardy at this point, or is it too early to decide?
No, we're not considering dropping sports. Our hope is that we get back to normal and are in a good place. But we've done a good job of managing our finances. Fiscally, we've been in good shape, and we are not looking, like some of our colleagues in the Big Ten, we're not looking to drop any sports.
Okay, that's good. I'm very glad to hear that. Thank you.
Any other questions from Regent members? Okay, let's turn it over to Chris McIntosh. Thanks again, Director Alvarez.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Regent President Peterson. I just wanted to take a moment as we navigate the times that we're in, and Barry touched on it, but I'd like to publicly say thank you on behalf of the department to a few folks and entities. First and foremost, to our staff, and to put a bit of a finer point on it, we have about 21 folks that are on 100% furlough and about 31 positions that are open and left unfilled. So we're down about 50 people, and our staff, to the point Barry made, have done more with less and have repurposed their day to deliver on our mission. And I just want to publicly thank them. Also to our campus, specifically to Chancellor Blank, who has been there for us from the beginning. Our financial challenge is well documented, and she has extended to us all the support in many ways, as much as she possibly could. I want to say thank you to her. For those at the system level and on this board who have come to our aid and helped us through these times in offering of testing resources or just frankly moral support, I'd like to say thank you to you as well. And lastly, to our supporters and to our fan base who have been there for us and allowed us to navigate these times. 2 out of 3, by way of example, 2 out of 3 season ticket holders for football have donated their season ticket revenue or deferred it to the following year, which has helped us through our cash flow challenges. But it's a beautiful thing to see at a time like this, those supporters of Badgers come forth and help us out in this really challenging time. So I wanted to just take this opportunity to say thank you to all of those who have helped us, and we'll be on to better and brighter days in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I think we got a question from Regent Bechtel. I'll start with you, Scott. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Regent President Peterson. Mr. Alvarez or Mr. McIntosh, probably like a lot of folks on this WebEx, I've not watching as much political coverage and more sports, so thank God our sports are still there. And I hear bits and pieces about the student-athlete experience, and maybe you could speak to that a little bit, because it seemed, and Mr. Alvarez, you spoke to this in terms of all those different competing interests for the football team. But like for whether it's women's volleyball, men's basketball, I'm hearing that they have to isolate quite a bit. They can only come together during practices, separate rooms when they're on the road. I mean, can you speak a little bit about just the day in the life of that student athlete?
This has really been a very difficult time for all of them. If you think back to the NBA a year ago when they went in a bubble, and as a former coach, you want to have every day and every week a routine down that you know exactly what you're going to do. You build the togetherness of your teams. You still want them to be social. You want them to enjoy their college life. But now with the pandemic, they have to be much more careful. I'll give you an example. My grandson, who plays on the football team, told his mother, "I won't see you after the games. I'm not going to be there after the games like we normally are. I'm going back to my apartment and just be away. I can't take a chance in being infected." And so that's the way it is with whether it be meetings. The coaches are meeting on Zooms. The athletes come in to eat. They walk through the training table. There's social distancing. They pick out what they want behind glass. We have servers put it in containers for them, put it in a bag. At the end of the line, they hand them a bag. They go back to their apartments and eat. So they do go to practice. They're in separate locker rooms, or they go home to shower after practices. So everything is totally different than what we've managed before. The coaches are responsible, and that's why I think we've done such a wonderful job managing this and having the success that we've had, because it's totally different than what they've been accustomed to. You don't have normal meetings, team meetings. There's Zoom meetings. Staff meetings or Zoom meetings, because you can't take a chance if one person test positive, with contact tracing, everyone's out for a quarantine for 2 weeks. So it's there's been a lot of thought put into it, how they manage their day-to-day practices, eatings, meeting, et cetera. So that's why there's kudos to the coaches, the athletes, and how they've been able to maneuver through this.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just rode crew in college, and those became my best friends because we spent so much time together, socially and athletically. And I just can't imagine what that day-in-day life is like. So thank you for that. And boy, the student athletes are just tremendous.
Right.
Other questions for the coach or for Chris?
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Barry and Chris have thanked a bunch of people, but I have to say, this has got to be the toughest year in athletics that anyone has ever seen. And I am just really proud of the way that they have led this department and pulled it through with far less upsets than many, many other departments. And, we couldn't have done this without the two of them. And I want to thank them for their leadership and all that they've done. That comes through in the presentation they've made.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We get so much visibility into what the athletic department is doing these days. We're certainly grateful for that. We're never caught off guard. I give a lot of credit to Chris McIntosh for keeping that pipeline open. It's absolutely pivotal. As you heard, Chris, you'll get a homework assignment from President Thompson. We're going to wear out some of your shoes, but it's pivotally important that we have those conversations with our friends in the Capitol. And I think no one can articulate that better than you both, as you've done here today. So with that, I'll certainly give you a round of applause for your presentation today, and thank you for being here. So as I mentioned at the onset of our meeting, we'd like to formally recognize our great friend and colleague, Regent José Delgado, and his service to the UW system in the state of Wisconsin. First, we're going to watch a brief video that I think is emblematic of everything José Delgado. Well, as Jose said, he certainly loved to talk, and he was good at it. He challenged conventional wisdom routinely, but we all listened. He talked about opening your mind and that of others, and had an impact on all of us. When we had events with students, Jose Delgado was the first person there, and he was the last person to leave. His commitment to learning was not only embodied by himself, but everything he did on this board, and that's what we need to cherish and remember. I'll now call on Regents Bob Atwell and Regent Hector Colon to present the board's resolution of appreciation for Regent Jose Delgado's service to the University of Wisconsin system. Gentlemen.
Thank you, President Peterson. Hector and I will alternate paragraphs here, and then we're each going to take the occasion to offer a few remarks at a personal level about Jose. Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System, Resolution of Appreciation, Regent Jose Delgado. Whereas Jose Delgado dedicated nearly 7 years of exemplary service as a regent of the University of Wisconsin System from May 2014 until his death in January 2020, and Hector, where did Hector go?
Okay, here. Sorry.
I knew you were going to cry, but I didn't think it was going to happen that soon.
Thank you. Whereas Jose was a steadfast proponent of maintaining high-quality, affordable public higher education for UWM students, serving on the Business and Finance Committee for 7 years, including 2 years on the Subcommittee of Investments, and vice-chairing the Capital Planning and Budget Committee for more than 4 years. And
whereas Jose also served on the Audit Committee, the Research, Economic Development, and Innovation Committee, and the Personnel Matters Review Committee, and served as a Regent member of the Higher Educational Aids Board and the Educational Communications Board. And
whereas Jose worked to publicly honor the outstanding commitment of UWM educators as a member of 2 awards committee for teaching excellence and academic staff excellence. And
whereas Jose helped select top UW leaders, serving as a member of the Special Chancellor Search Committee for UW-Milwaukee in 2014 and UW-Stevens Point in 2020. And
whereas Jose was a proud and civic-minded alumnus of UW system, having earned a master's degree in business administration from UW-Milwaukee and serving as a member of the UW-Milwaukee Chancellor Council for Corporate Sponsors and School of Business Advisory Council. And
whereas Jose, who came to the United States from Cuba when he was 14 years old, was a staunch supporter of free speech and rational discourse, and championed higher education as a means to improve lives and communities in Wisconsin.
Be it therefore resolved that Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System thereby offers thanks and commendation to Jose Delgado for his many life achievements and his exceptional service to the citizens of Wisconsin.
Well, we heard how Jose came to the U.S. from Cuba at the age of 14. And at the age of 17, he made the decision to give his life without reservation as a layman living and working in the world as a soul dedicated to God, to his work, and to the personal and professional development of others. His technical skill and his affable brilliance made him a very prominent leader in business and community affairs. More than anything else, Jose dedicated his life as a friend to others. This is the type of friendship that brings forth the best in others. And it's in this context that we met 30-some years ago. For the last 12 years, we've met personally at least once a month for a very intentional 30-minute talk about certain aspects of my family, my work, and my relationship with God. He would, of course, never have discussed the contents of these discussions, but since I was the subject, I'm at liberty to share two of these memories. One time, a number of years back, I was disgusted with myself at my lack of progress in certain areas that we had been talking about over many of our visits. I was kind of denouncing my feckless frivolity in kind of an agitated but a very general fashion. And he stopped me short. He looked at me with that playful smile and he said, "Bob, you aren't good enough to feel that bad." And this was not kind of the sarcastic smackdown that you might think. I think the truth was my exaggerated disappointment contained an element of pride, and he wanted to point that out to me, as if I thought I were so good that I was not capable of being kind of bumbling and stumbling. His words were a liberating reminder that God knows me and loves me and is far more interested in the concrete progress I can make rather than the sweeping denunciation that lacks any real definition. José had remarkably clear insight, but little patience for a critical spirit towards others, anybody, even ourselves. Being guided by him was very challenging, uplifting, enlightening, encouraging, and as you all know, quite humorous. Another time I was talking about the difficulty I have in praying for people that I'm having a real struggle with. Again, he stopped me short. "Let me tell you something. I prayed every day that Fidel Castro would go to heaven. Right now." And you can imagine how José felt about Castro's impact on his home, his family, and many other people that he knew as a young man. But I can assure you that he was stone cold serious about praying for Castro's eternal destiny, even while ardently hoping for his prompt temporal departure. There's no way to understand José without reference to his Catholic faith. He prayed in one fashion or another for over 2 hours each day. He understood and assented firmly in matters of doctrine. But the core of his faith was an intimate relationship with Jesus Christ that propelled his energy outward toward the people around him. The word Catholic literally means universal, and José has this universal Catholic heart. He had strong opinions coupled with an unwavering openness and respect toward others. You may have noticed he didn't care that much about what other people thought of him. He literally cared more about other people than what other people thought about him. And we all saw this in the video clip, and most of us have seen it in the delight that he took in traveling our campuses and meeting with faculty and students. He was passionate about education, and he lit up when he was in a room full of faculty and students. But he was more passionate about people. The word magnanimous translates literally as large-souled, and this describes the José who, over 50 years, met with thousands of people to help them sharpen their minds and expand their hearts. He used his knowledge, his time, and his winsome charm to help us live happier, more fruitfully, and more generously. And I speak for all of those hundreds, really thousands of people when I say thank you, José, and Godspeed.
Thank you, Bob, for sharing those beautiful words about our dear friend, José Delgado. You know, as I was emerging as a young, ambitious Latino leader, I always looked up to José. You know, I knew that he held an executive position at We Energies. I recall when he received his executive MBA, he was being promoted through the UW-M marketing materials. He was on the board for the United Community Center, that an organization that had a huge impact on my life. And I was also the associate executive director there when José was on the board. And I was intrigued when he started his own company. But it wasn't until we met at a silent retreat 7 years ago where we developed a really deep friendship. And although it was supposed to be a silent retreat, Jose and I talked a lot at that retreat and really got the opportunity to get to know one another. I want to share just a few stories. One relating to the story that Bob Atwell just shared is that I came to him and started sharing some of my shortcomings and some of the challenges I felt I was facing in life. And he responded with just a loving heart. And he said that the son is never so dirty that the mother would not wash him. And he felt, I felt this huge sense of love through him. And I was very appreciative of that. Another story I have is one of the worst days of my life. And I'm very embarrassed to say that it is because I was welled up with pride. And it was one story where I was essentially being provoked and even bullied by another individual. And I remember it was a horrible situation, and I imagine, me hurting this guy, knocking him out, but I didn't. I had temperance, and I did not. And thankfully, the waitress came and he left. But all that day, I was just feeling terrible, and I needed to talk to somebody. So I came to Jose. And you all know Jose, he can get animated and very passionate. And this might be one of those situations where you could see Jose with that passion, with that animation. But instead, I found this huge calm. And he said, with this smile on his face, and said, you should thank God that this happened to you right now during Lent, and give thanks to Jesus that you can identify with some of the challenges that he faced for all of us. And so I want to end off by sharing a few. I have this book that's really Jose with all of our chats, the opportunities we had to talk with one another, and I've gained some really good insights with him. And hopefully these are great insights for all of you here today as I end my remarks. This is from Jose. Violence is the consequence of pride. All good deeds represent simply the good work of God. Use your work, your study, your struggles as prayer. Purify all of your actions. You can be Christ passing by through all of your ordinary activities. Love the world passionately. Anything done out of love is prayer. Be loyal to your friends and family. Be generous, giving yourself completely to others, your wife, your friends, your family. Go out there and meet more people. Be optimistic, God will help. Be tenacious to do good work. Be decisive, others are counting on you. Be industrious, work hard, and do it with excellence. Be simple, do not make a big thing of yourself. Be sincere, have a genuine love for God. Be natural, do ordinary acts with excellence. Have order, fortitude, don't give up. Valor, be brave and firm in your leadership. Cheerful, always, especially in your home. Daring when it counts for others. Happy, always, especially in your home. Thank you, Jose, for the great example you provided me and so many in all over the world, actually. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share a few words about my dear friend.
Thank you, Regent Cologne. Thank you, Regent Atwell. Your words represent how all of us feel about the loss of our good friend, Jose Delgado. I appreciate you delivering that resolution. I know his family is very grateful for all of the support that they've received during this most difficult time. And it's been easier to have you alongside me as we've had to deal with something that was very unexpected and certainly something that we want to make sure we provide appropriate tribute for all of his contributions, his friendship, and his leadership. So with that, I thank you both, and I thank you, Jose. At this time, I'll ask all members of the board to stay on the line while we complete the roll call to move into closed session. Following the vote, please remain in this meeting while Jess clears our line. Vice President Greavy, will you read the motion to move us into closed session, please?
I will. I move that the Board of Regents move into closed session to A, consider a UW-Madison request for a faculty salary adjustment permitted by Section 1985 1C of the Wisconsin statutes. B, consider a UW-Parkside honorary degree nomination as permitted by Section 1985 1F of the Wisconsin statutes. C, consider UW-Milwaukee honorary degree nominations as permitted by Section 1985 1F of the Wisconsin statutes. D, consider a student request for a review of a UW-Madison disciplinary decision as permitted by Section 1985 1A, F, and G of the Wisconsin statutes. Consider a student request for review of a UW River Falls disciplinary decision as permitted by Sections 1985 1A, F, and G of the Wisconsin statutes. Consider strategies for crime detection and prevention as permitted under Section 1985 1D of the Wisconsin statutes. Consider personnel evaluations of chancellors as permitted by Section 1985 1C of the Wisconsin statutes, and confer with legal counsel regarding potential litigation as permitted by Section 1985 1G of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you, Vice President Greavy. Regents, we have a motion on the floor. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Regent Woodman-C. Madam Clerk, please call the roll to move into closed session.
Regent President Peterson?
Yes.
Regent Vice President Greavy?
Yes.
Regent Atwell?
Yes.
Regent Bexel?
Yes.
Regent Bogus?
Yes.
Regent Colon?
Yes.
Regent Paul?
Yes.
Regent Jones?
Yes.
Regent Klein?
Yes.
Regent Ludlow?
Yes.
Regent Menedee?
Yes.
Regent Peterson?
Yes.
Regent Saffold?
Yes.
Regent Stanford Taylor?
Yes.
Regent Walsh?
Yes.
Regent Weatherly?
Yes.
Regent Woodmansee?
Yes.
We are now in closed session.